Will now be in order. I see that there is a sufficient number of voters present to permit us to open the meeting. The meeting is called pursuant to a warrant signed by the Select Board on October 17, 2016. I have inspected the return of service on the warrant and find it to be in order. I declare that the meeting is properly called. We're very grateful to Principal Mastrullo, the Regional School Committee, and the faculty, students, and staff of the high school for accommodating us here this evening and bearing with the disruption that we have caused to their activities at this busy time of year. Please note that to vote on tonight's articles, you must be seated in the auditorium. You may watch and listen to the proceedings in the cafeteria while you enjoy a snack, but you must return to the auditorium and take a seat to vote. We are again grateful to Principal Mastrullo and also to Assistant Town Manager Kate Hodges and the high school cafeteria staff for serving up coffee, drinks, and snack items in the cafeteria this evening. Please do not bring anything but water into the auditorium, however. The deputy moderator, who will preside over this meeting if the moderator elected by the town is unable to serve in that position, is Ms. Peggy Briggs of 253 Elm Street. I see her there. Thank you. Closer to the microphone. Excellent. I see Peggy there, and Ms. Briggs was elected by annual town meeting on April 4, 2016 to serve in the capacity of deputy town moderator until next annual town meeting. Before we proceed further, I would like to invite Fire Chief Mark Coutreau to come to the podium to tell us what we need to know in case of an emergency this evening. Our safety in an unexpected emergency is very much dependent on our preparedness, so please do give Chief Coutreau your full attention.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And what a terrific building to have a town meeting in, very fire safe. But just in case, if the alarms do go off, I hope that you'll look around and you'll check out and see the nearest exit towards you. They're all marked. And just like in the other building, if you go through that door, the door closest to you, you're going to see another exit sign bring you right outside. So it's really a very simple egress here. If you have children in daycare, I don't think there are many, but if you do, and the alarms go off, the instructions to the daycare providers are to bring your children outside. So please don't walk through the building. Walk outside the building, just like we discussed, and then walk around the building to the maroon gym, and your children will be sitting right outside. And finally, if you just want to make sure that we're not blocking any aisle space with gear or anything of any substance, that'd be terrific. We want to keep that clear so we have a safe night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. I would also like to thank Chief O'Connor and the officers of the Concord Police Department who are here tonight, as they are every day, to protect and serve. The green booklet entitled Concord Town Meeting Traditions and Procedures looks like this, which I note is in its 22nd edition, is available on the literature tables in the cafeteria, and I hope you have taken a copy to review. If you have questions about procedure, please feel free to talk with the town meeting procedure resource person. Tonight, that is none other than Mr. Ned Perry of 362 Bedford Street. Mr. Perry, would you please stand and let us know where you are? Thank you. He is available for consultation on process issues and assistance in drafting and presenting motions and amendments. There are also materials on the literature table in the cafeteria that will better inform you about tonight's articles, and I hope that you also have collected copies of those to review. If you have a presentation for this special town meeting or a lengthy amendment that you plan to offer, you should already have submitted it to Mr. Sean Dugan, our Able Information Officer. I will ask Mr. Dugan to rise and wave so that everyone may see where he is. Thank you, Sean. If you have an amendment that has not been submitted to Mr. Dugan, please speak to him as soon as you can. If you are a registered voter in Concord, you should have received a voting slip that looks like this when you checked in. You will want to keep your voting slip handy so that you're able to raise it for votes by a show of hands and in a standing counted vote. Your voting slip is what identifies you as a person entitled to vote. You may want to write your name on your slip, as I have done on mine. If you are a resident of Concord who is not registered to vote or a visitor to tonight's meeting, you should have checked in as a visitor in the cafeteria. And you should be seating in the visitors section located in the rear of the auditorium to my left. We welcome you as observers to our town meeting. I have appointed Mr. Abe Fisher of 400 Hayward Mill Road to be head teller, and Mr. David Carr of 82 Lawsbrook Road to be ballot supervisor, and Mr. Paul Horwitz of 173 Hayward Mill Road as assistant ballot supervisor. Mr. Fisher will be supervising vote counting on the floor in the event of a counted vote, and Mr. Carr will be supervising ballot counting procedure and vote certification in the event that the meeting votes for a paper ballot on a motion. Mr. Fisher, are the tellers ready to be sworn? We are. Mr. Carr, are the ballot counters ready to be sworn? We are. Tellers and ballot counters, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Does each of you swear that you will faithfully and impartially perform your respective duties at this town meeting? Thank you all. On behalf of the meeting, I thank Mr. Fisher and Mr. Carr and Mr. Horwitz and each of the tellers and ballot counters for taking on this vital town meeting function. And if we do call upon you to count a vote, please do not forget to count your own votes. A number of other thank yous are in order this evening to the many people who've made it possible for us to hold tonight's meeting and to run it in the smooth and orderly way to which we have become accustomed. The Public Works staff who year after year help us with setting up town meeting, Andy Giles, Mick Hone, and Rich Weaver, thank you. The CPR and First Aid Certified Child Care Sitters, Zach Vellette and Marty Hutchinson, they are available in the gymnasium. There are signs in the cafeteria that point you the way there. They are available to take care of kids this evening. Thank you to Girl Scouts Anna Weber and Maggie Riley, and Boy Scouts Luke Powder, Nick Higgins, and Will Duggan for taking care of this evening's flag ceremony. The town clerk's office, Anita Techley and Pat Clifford, a big thank you to them, and to the town manager's office staff, Chris Whalen, Kate Hodges, Sean Dugan, Mark Howell, Leslie Koplow, and Laurel Landry. And thank you also to the staff of CCTV who have set up this evening's IT arrangements and are broadcasting on CCTV for us this evening. As your brand new moderator, I'm particularly grateful to these people, as well as to former moderators Eric Van Loon and Ned Perry, who have been so generous with their time and materials. Thank you, Ned and Eric. I call now on Junior Girl Scouts Anna Webster and Maggie Riley, and Boy Scouts Luke Palter, Nick Higgins, and Will Duggan to bring the flags forward. And would you all please stand while the flags are brought forward and remain standing. Thank you. Before we begin the business of this special town meeting, as has long been our custom, let us stand and hold a moment of silence. We come together this evening for a special town meeting to serve as Concord's legislature. In considering and voting upon the articles before us, we may and should ask probing questions, offer our views on the merits of proposals, and debate competing views. As we do so, we should be mindful that we also come together this evening as a community. A community is a place where every member has a right to belong. It should be a place where every person feels safe. It should be a place where each individual's dignity and self-respect is strengthened by the respect and affection of his neighbors. It should be a place where each of us can find the satisfaction and warmth which comes from being a member of the greater community of humankind. These observations on community, still meaningful to us today, were first made by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. Let each of us here tonight maintain an open mind, an open heart, and graciousness when we disagree, and a healthy sense of humor so that the debates of this meeting will not be a source of division among us when our business here is finished. Thank you, and please be seated. The minutes of this evening's meeting will be kept by Town Clerk Anita Techley, who is sitting here to my right. Thank you, Anita. Our Select Board is seated at the table in front of the auditorium to my left. Would you all wave, please? Thank you. The Planning Board is seated at the other table. Would you please wave? Thank you. Our Finance Committee is seated in the front rows of the auditorium to my left. Would you all please wave? Thank you. I'd like to note that the members of these boards and committees are all volunteers, and that they all find a great deal of personal reward and sometimes even glory in their service to our town. Now's when you all nod vigorously. If you too would like to reap these enormous rewards, you could run for office, or you could start smaller by filling out a green card to volunteer for one of our many boards or committees. Green cards look like this. You will find them on the literature tables in the cafeteria, and there's also a link to an online green card at concordma.gov. All kidding aside, service on town boards and committees is interesting and important work, and it's a great way to get to know your neighbors and your community better. Mr. Lawson moves that the reading of the warrant and the return of service thereon be omitted. Is there a second? I see there is a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor raise their ballots. Thank you. All opposed raise their ballots. I see that the motion carries by a large majority, and I declare that that is a vote. And we are now ready to proceed to Article 1, and Mr. Whalen will be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Chris Whalen, Town Manager. I live at 1935 Main Street. Article 1 requests that the town vote to approve an agreement between the town and the developer of solar power facilities on town land off Main Street in West Concord for payment to the town in lieu of property taxes. This aerial photo...
Let me stop you for a moment there, Mr. Town Manager, and ask if there is a second. Thank you.
Great. This aerial photo shows the former W.R. Grace site where the solar panels will be located. It has a Main Street address, but access is actually via Knox Trail. The town voted in 2012 to acquire the property from the W.R. Grace Company for solar power generation, wastewater treatment, and other municipal purposes. Negotiations with the company on the purchase were unsuccessful, and after 3 years, the Select Board moved to take the property by eminent domain in August of 2015. The Concord Municipal Light Plant issued a request for proposals from vendors to develop solar power at the site, and earlier this year entered into a purchase power agreement with the Kearsarge Company. The company is building a 5.6 megawatt system expected to cover 21.6 acres. This photo was taken several weeks ago, so more development has taken place, and it shows the construction taking place off Knox Trail, adjacent to the Acton Industrial Park. The property is located in Concord, but right along the corporate boundary between Concord and Acton. In the lower left is the new school bus facility currently under construction. The steel is actually up this week, so it looks different. In the center of this photo is the land that has been cleared for the installation of the solar array. The Assabet River borders the property to the east. This photo shows some of the installed solar panels in the portion of the array furthest from the bus facility. As of today, the array is 80% complete. The developer is working hard to meet the January 8th target date for going live to deliver electricity to the town. The property the solar array is being constructed on is town-owned and therefore is exempt from property taxation. However, because the solar panels and other equipment are privately owned and are generating revenue for a private company, the equipment is considered taxable. The ability of solar panels to generate power and therefore generate revenue is variable depending on factors such as the weather and energy markets. This can make the value of the panels at any one time difficult for the Board of Assessors to determine. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 39H, allows solar power producers operating on public property to negotiate an agreement for making a payment in lieu of taxes to the host community. Such an agreement makes the tax liability for the corporation and the tax income for the community more stable and reliable. The schedule payments, sorry for the small type, the schedule of payments and the agreement was a handout. I should have mentioned that sooner, that the agreement was a handout for tonight's meeting. The schedule is shown here. The Board of Assessors front-end loaded, so the larger payments are in the first 5 years and then they diminish thereafter. It's $70,000 in the first year. At year 10, it'd be $28,000, and then at year 20, it's $26,000. And then the primary value of our agreement with Kearsarge Corporation is the purchase power agreement, which provides carbon-free energy at a reasonable price with no transmission costs to get the electricity to Concord because it's being generated here. But the pilot agreement does add value for the public, and I recommend your favorable action on Article 1.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 1, and the FinCom Finance Committee also recommends affirmative action on number 1. We're now ready for comments from the floor. Let me point out that there are 4 microphones in the auditorium. Microphones 1 and 2 are down here in the lower aisle. Up above are microphones 3 and 4. We don't have any pro and con microphones this evening, so any microphone is fine. Each speaker, so please do pay attention to that. You'll be pleased to know that the Van Loon bell is still with us. And if you lose track of time, you will hear the bell. Let me remind you that this is a meeting to conduct the legislative business of the town, and there's no place in it for clapping, cheering, booing, or other demonstrations from the audience. And while we expect debate to be rigorous on the issues, we expect it to be gentle on the individuals. Please remember to state your name and address, and when you are recognized, please direct your remarks to the moderator. You will have the gratitude and affection of the meeting if you keep your comments focused and concise. Are there any questions or comments? Microphone 1.
Stephan Bader, 7 River Street.
Mr. Bader?
A quick proofread of Schedule or Exhibit B. I believe the year, there's a typo in the year that should read 2030. It seems to say 2010 on the agreement, although on the Finance Committee handout it does say 2030.
Madam Chair, that's correct. We will ask the company to make the adjustment in the final agreement. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Paul Horwich. Paul Horwitz, 173 Hayward Mill Road. No? Is this on?
Yes, it's
Okay,
on.
it is now. Paul
Proceed,
Horwitz,
Mr.
173
Horwitz.
Hayward Mill Road. My question is it's relatively complicated, but I really would appreciate a bit of information. I'd like to get a sense of the scale of this with respect to the total energy usage by the town. You talk about 5.6 megawatts, that's peak power, I assume. I guess the kind of thing I'd be interested in is how much do we typically use? And at some level, that's also a question of this can be used at peak, probably at peak power usage times when the power is most expensive. So in some sense, and this is the kind of thing obviously went through your negotiations, but the rest of us are not familiar with the details. So if you could give us a sense of how much the town is saving this way and what it amounts to in the grand scheme of things, that would be helpful. Thank you. Sure.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Whalen.
This particular project will provide about 3.75% of our annual electrical needs over time. Together with the landfill installation is about 1.5% of our needs. So it's slightly over 5% is between those two large solar installations that we've provided. 550 homes or so from the Gray site, and about 200 homes would be fully powered by the landfill site. So it's on that order of magnitude. The savings are substantial relative to the transmission costs. It costs about 5 cents a kilowatt hour to get power from wind turbines in Maine or any of the other power plants through the ISO New England system and to Concord. And we avoid that 5 cents transmission cost, which is substantial. So the purchase power is on the order of about 7.5 cents is what we'd be paying for this. It's slightly below market rate, actually, but it's not dramatically so, but our real motivation is to avoid burning the carbon that comes with fossil fuels.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Microphone 2.
Marty Plotkin, 54 Francis Street.
Mr. Plotkin?
I would be interested to know if you were to equate this payment in lieu of taxes with the taxes that we would collect based on various models of the actual, projected economics of the power generation in terms of cost of power and so forth, what would it be equivalent to in what the projections might be? How pessimistic would you have to be about the economic value in order to think that this is a better deal for the town than just taxing the actual value?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer, and we didn't do the economic modeling because, again, I think it's a challenge to when the weather, it's surprising how quickly the production from the solar panels diminishes on a cloudy day or you have a rainy month. And then when energy markets, they do rise and fall. So I think the assessors would be in a constant, battle with the company, arguing that it didn't make as much revenue this month as it had last month, or that sort of thing. So we didn't run the numbers in that way. This is a technique that's been used by many communities to simplify all of that argument. And again, the real value for the town is in the lower cost energy that we're purchasing, and this is sort of a small part of that. I don't know if that.
Do you have a follow-up question, Mr. Plotkin?
So how did you arrive at this number, I guess, is my question.
So we took the estimated value of what we thought that the panels would be worth early in the process, what the revenue that would be generated, and part of the front-end loading is because the company will make most of its money toward the front, and as the panels get over, the production will diminish somewhat. So it was based on what we thought the value of the cost of installing. So they purchased the solar panels, they installed them, there's a cost associated with that. We basically used that.
Got it. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, it appears that we are ready for a vote. I will remind anyone who is in the cafeteria watching proceedings on the screen, you need to come into the auditorium and take a seat in order to vote. All in favor of Article 1, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All against Article 1, please raise your ballots. That carries unanimously, and I do so declare. We are now ready for Article 2, which is for easements over town land for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. You see the motion here. Is there a second? Thank you. I see that there is. Mr. Whalen.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Article 2 requests that the town vote to authorize the Select Board to grant easements over town-owned land for the purpose of developing the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. This article is similar to articles that were approved last spring, granting easements over town-owned land in several locations. The state will be using federal transportation funding to construct the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail in Concord, and construction is expected to begin in the fall of 2017. The Commonwealth wants to be sure that easements are in place, ensuring that needed town land that's needed for the trail won't be dedicated to other uses. In this case, the easement is needed for contractor access during construction of the trail and the installation of guardrail and loam and seating when the guardrail is completed. This photo shows the location of the proposed easement on Powder Mill Road. The orange lines show the boundary of the railroad right-of-way where the rail trail will be going and where it will pass underneath Powder Mill Road. The blue lines show the outline of parcel number 3182, which is a single parcel straddling both sides of the rail trail. At the annual town meeting in April, the town voted under Article 59 to approve easements over the land on the left in that slide, or the west side of the parcel, where sloped access path will be constructed to allow trail users to access the trail from Powder Mill Road. It was overlooked that a small amount of work will be required on the east side of this parcel, and Mass DOT wants to ensure that an easement is in place before construction will begin. This is a cut sheet from the 100% design plans for the rail trail. The rail trail runs across the top of this drawing. Powder Mill Road runs perpendicular along the left-hand side. The drawing shows that the guardrail will be installed along Powder Mill Road because there's a steep change in grade where the tunnel will pass underneath the roadway. The notes indicate that loam and seed will be installed once the work is completed. State and federal funding rules require that permanent easements be in place to ensure that the town land will be available for the necessary aspects of the rail trail. This grant of easement will ensure that funding for the construction of the trail, currently estimated to cost $12 million, will be provided by the state and federal agencies. Work on the trail in Acton is already progressing very smoothly, and we hope to see that work begin in Concord next fall. And I recommend your favorable action on Article 2.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 2, as does the Finance Committee, and I believe, are we going to hear from the Select Board on this article? No? Okay. Oh, the Finance Committee took no position. Oh, thank you very much. Pardon me, the Finance Committee took no position on this article. Thank you, Anita. Okay, are there questions or comments on Article 2? Seeing none, it looks like we are ready to proceed to a vote. All in favor of Article 2, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All opposed to Article 2, please raise your ballots. That also looks like a unanimous vote, and I do so declare. We're now ready to proceed to Article 3. Mr. McBride. This is a citizen petition. There are handouts out in the cafeteria that pertain to this, and the motion is on the screen. And is there a second? I see that there is a second. Thank you. Mr. McBride?
Jack McBride, 943 Lowell Road.
Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Article 3, approval of Article 3 is the first step in permitting Phase 2 of Black Birch, an age-restricted community of 16 homes adjacent to Thoreau Club. There are many benefits to the project for the town that I will outline. While the zoning does not require affordable units in the project, we are committing to provide 2 affordable units for people earning up to 80% of median income, and these units will count in the town's inventory as calculated by the state. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Forest Ridge is located at the westerly end of Main Street, across from Valley Sports and Powder Mill Plaza. It abuts the Starmont property, Thoreau Hills, and the Muse Apartments. The subject property includes 4A on the yellow up in the top right, Parcel A, the light green triangle down in the lower left, both of which are part of the Thoreau Club property right now. They're contained within the Thoreau Club property. This Parcel A is comprised of undisturbed woodlands adjacent to town-owned conservation land that we propose to gift to the town for conservation purposes. With the addition of this parcel, the open space parcel, the land preserved for conservation at Forest Ridge, including open space and land formerly gifted to the town, shown here in green, the green band around the edge, will be 34 acres. Other properties on Forest Ridge Road are the Minuteman Arc Building, Riverbend Condominium, town-owned land for CMLP substation, the Thoreau Club and Thoreau Camp, and Black Birch Phase 1. Next slide, please. The plan for Phase 2 at Black Birch was first presented to the town on July 12th, 2016, at a planning board public hearing. The design of Phase 2 incorporates many of the features of Phase 1. There are attached and detached homes with traditional designs. A village green provides a place for gardens and neighborhood gatherings. The homes have private lawns and outdoor spaces. There's a sidewalk along Forest Ridge Road that connects to walking trails and the town-owned conservation land that you saw a moment ago. The 2- and 3-bedroom homes range from about 1,800 to 2,500 square feet, and each has first floor, master, and a 2-car garage. The homes will be highly energy efficient, as they are in Phase 1, and offer a number of healthy home options. Next slide, please. Why is town meeting action required on this? The land at Forest Ridge is zoned Limited Industrial Park 2. In that zone, residential use is allowed with a 2/3 town meeting vote. In 2015, town meeting approved the plan for the first phase of Black Birch, and Riverbend Condominium was approved by town meeting in 2001. Next slide, please. So what is town meeting actually approving? Town meeting is approving the proposed residential use of the property, and the vote will ensure that the maximum number of units is 16. Each unit will be occupied by a resident 55 and over. 2 units will be affordable in perpetuity, and as we said, we've committed to that as 80% of median level. And the open space will be at least 4.6 acres. These conditions cannot be modified after town meeting. After town meeting approval, assuming we get approval, we would be filing for a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Approval from the Board of Appeals is based upon a recommendation from the Planning Board and the Natural Resources Commission. Next slide, please. Today, the annual property tax based on the current recreational use of the property is approximately $4,600 per year. An independent fiscal report reviewed by the town's finance director and provided to the finance committee projects that the second phase of Black Birch will generate annual property taxes of $257,000. Because there will be no school-aged children in this age-restricted community, there's a very positive net fiscal benefit to the town. Next slide, please. Our development team is made up of long-term Concord residents. I've lived in Concord for 25 years and have been active in the town's affordable housing efforts. My company, Abode, has done a number of projects and homes in town. Kevin Hurley, our land planner, has lived in town for more than 40 years. Kevin's developed many quality projects in town, including Riverbend Condominium in 2001. And our architects, Elise Stone and Paul Mahoney, have a deep respect for the tradition of Concord's architecture. Their designs have enhanced neighborhoods throughout town in Concord, and they have, each of them, a long history of service to the town of Concord. Next slide, please. Approval of Article 3 will provide a number of direct benefits to the town. These include moderately sized, energy-efficient homes for older residents looking to stay in Concord, an environmentally sensitive plan, conservation land deeded to the town, and significant new revenues, which will help offset increasing tax burdens on all of the existing homeowners in town. And finally, the 2 units that we will be building at no cost to the town, which will provide affordable housing in perpetuity. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. The Select Board has recommended affirmative action on Article 3. The Finance Committee has recommended affirmative action, and the Planning Board has recommended affirmative action. And I believe that we will hear from the Select Board. Mr. Lawson? Yes?
Mike Lawson, 1695 Lowell Road, a member of the Select Board and speaking for the board.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Select Board voted unanimously to recommend affirmative action on Article 3. This is a sound project, Phase 2 of a development of which Phase 1 was approved at town meeting in 2015. It provides housing options for people over 50 and who perhaps are choosing to downsize in Concord. The contribution to our tax rolls is welcome as budgets for the town and our schools continue to tighten. Together, Phases 1 and 2 will provide more annual property tax revenue than the town's annual contribution to the operating budget of Minuteman Vocational Tech, as an example. This decision was made difficult because the developer also indicated his willingness to either include 2 units of affordable housing as he indicated, or to provide the town with a cash contribution to support affordable housing initiatives in town. Both are generous and neither was required. The Select Board weighed these options to determine the best long-term benefit for the town. The Planning Board and several housing advocates argued passionately for having affordable housing dispersed throughout the town by including affordable projects. We agree that including affordable housing in all developments is laudable, but the Select Board drew a different initial conclusion. As originally conceived, the affordable housing units, while positive, would not have helped Concord achieve its goals of affordable housing in town. We noted that the article that we dealt with on the units would simply not count toward Concord's 10% affordable housing goal. We believe that the cash contribution might give us a future opportunity to act quickly if property became available to buy down the cost of a house or an apartment that could count toward these goals. And therefore, in addition to voting to support the article, we had initially voted to propose an amendment to accept the cash contribution. However, this article as presented this evening changes our perspective. As you've heard from Mr. McBride, this type of affordable housing units is now contained will count toward Concord's affordable housing goal, and this is a significant contribution. Consequently, we unanimously support this article, thank the developer for providing 2 units of affordable housing to help the town meet its goal, and recommend affirmative action on Article 3.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. And I believe we will hear also from the Planning Board, Ms. Whiting-Cash.
Brooke Whiting-Cash, 1114 Lowell Road.
Proceed.
As enumerated in the handout available tonight, the Planning Board is in unanimous support of the Phase 2 Black Birch Alternative PRD in Limited Industrial Park 2 and recommends affirmative action on Articles 3, 4, and 5 tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of all 3 articles. The petitioner has appeared before the planning board presenting this project 3 times since July of this year, fulfilling all requirements to the satisfaction of the board. All supporting documentation has been available through the planning division throughout that time. The proposed development closely follows the Phase 1 proposal that was approved by town meeting in 2015. Limited Industrial Park Number 2 is unique unto itself in its limitations and requirements. Beginning in 2001, town meeting amended the zoning bylaw to allow alternative PRDs in the Limited Industrial Park 2 district and granted approval for residential development in this area with the approval of Riverbend. Then again in 2015 for Black Birch Phase 1. Planned residential developments in other parts of town are subject to a different process and do not require town meeting approval. After this period of consideration, it is the board's opinion that the proposed development is in keeping with the intent of Concord zoning bylaws and long-term housing development goals. The planning board recommends affirmative action on Articles 3, 4, and 5 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Whiting-Cash. We will hear separately about Articles 4 and 5. The vote that we will take and the comments that we will take right now are only on Article 3, although all 3 articles pertain to the same project. So are there questions or comments on Article 3? Microphone 3.
Sue Felshen, 19 Sunnyside Lane.
Ms. Felshen?
It was a part of the presentation that following this vote, no conditions could be changed. I don't see that in the language of the motion before us. Perhaps it's contained in the agreement noted in the motion. So can either the select board or the planning board confirm that that is the case? Thank you.
Ms. Whiting-Cash, perhaps you'd like to address that? Town Council will address that.
Madam Moderator, Mina Macarius, Town Council.
Proceed.
The proposal that is referred to in the motion does state that the conditions cannot be modified after said vote, and that vote is a town meeting vote.
Thank you. Let's see, microphone 1.
Ara Avakian, 501 Powder Mill Road.
Mr. Avakian?
I have a question for Mr. McBride. I'm wondering if he's willing to give a rough estimate at today's market prices for the range of costs for the 14 non-affordable units.
Mr. McBride?
Yes, the range on the pricing is based on the square footages and the attached and detached units. As we all know, housing in Concord is very expensive. Land in Concord is very expensive, and new construction is very expensive. So in Phase 1, we started in the 800 and something range, I think, the first couple, and since then the prices have gone up. And so we're looking at a Phase 2 starting by the 900 number, and the issue is that, not the issue, but one of the benefits of Black Birch for the buyers is that they have a huge range of options. So the final pricing is totally based on what the buyers do, but that's what we're looking for. So it's somewhat of an increase from Phase 1, but the costs have gone up as well.
Thank you very much. I'll just add that I'm definitely over 55.
Microphone 2.
Charles Phillips, 65 Fairhaven Road.
Mr. Phillips.
Chair of the Concord Housing Foundation, and speaking for the foundation. The foundation is in favor of this proposal, urges your approval. We are very pleased by the fact that Mr. McBride has agreed to create those 2 affordable units at an 80% level, and of course we're in favor of the project as a whole, including the other warrant articles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Microphone number 1.
Thank you. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road.
Ms. Kaufman.
I speak for the League of Women Voters. I'm the Vice President, and I speak for the Town Government Initiative Committee in their work and research on this project. The League of Women Voters appreciates the thoughtful alternative PRD proposal for Black Birch 2 and recognizes it meets an important unmet need for 55 and over housing aimed at people who wish to downsize. This proposal should be looked at, however, in its entirety as presented in Articles 3, 4, and 5. We oppose this proposal because of precedents set in interpreting zoning bylaws, and this specifically now is Article 3, and the permanent change to zoning bylaws related to housing density along Forest Ridge Road, Article 5. Article 3 sets the precedent of using non-contiguous lots to meet the open space requirements for the alternative PRD. This could have long-term implications on the land use and character of this part of town. The materials presented at the public hearings stated Black Birch 2 is located on 9.11 acres when in fact it is located on 5.79 acres, and the remaining 3.11 acres are over 1/4 of a mile away. The remote 3.11 acres account for 75% of the open space for this alternative PRD. The precedent set by this approach could allow a developer in the future to assemble a set of parcels in this zoning district, build a condominium-type development along Forest Ridge Road, and provide the open space distant from the development. The League believes the precedent of using non-contiguous lots in LIP number 2 should not be approved during this meeting, and further discussion occur, therefore, on the long-term implications of this move. Therefore, the League recommends no action on Article 3.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Madam Moderator, my name is Tim Rose, 97 Bartlett Hill Road.
Mr. Rose.
I support this warrant article, and I am pleased that the choice was made for 2 affordable housing units as opposed to $1 million, since affordable housing units are permanent and $1 million may go, we do not know where for sure. I do have a question, however. In my handout, which is from the November 29th, it says that the alternative uses lists 4.7 acres for common open space, and parcel A is 3.32 acres. My question is, does that open space actually include parcel 6E? And if I can read it, 5B, is that how they get up to 4.7? Or I'd just like to know how they get to the 4.47.
Thank you. Mr. McBride, perhaps you can address that. And I wonder if we could have the site plan back up. Mr. Hurley will address that.
My name's Kevin Hurley. I live at 1489 Main Street. Madam Moderator.
Slide to have up, Mr. Hurley. That one?
Yes, that slide is sufficient. As shown at the top of the slide, is parcel 4A, which has 5.76 acres of land in it. Shown on the lower portion of the slide, there is a parcel labeled parcel A. The 3.3 acres will be conveyed to the town as open space, as public open space. Get my math wrong, excuse me just a minute. 1.4 acres of the 5.75 acres will also be set aside as open space in and around the 16 units to be put on that property.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Microphone 1.
Ann Hayden, 342 Sudbury Road, and I would like to speak with a no vote for this. I feel that there has not been enough time to consider the ramifications of this reinterpretation of the bylaw that takes 2 parcels that are not next to each other and combines them to give the total amount of space that is needed in order to do a development. I think that we need to think further about the ramifications, even if it's only in one particular part of town, about the ramifications of doing that, what it means for the development in Concord, Development in Concord is something that the community is very concerned about right now. We have a long-range planning committee that is just starting and is looking at all of this. And I think that this has happened so quickly that there are a whole lot of people, residents, who do not know that this is happening and want to be a part of this discussion. I'm not necessarily saying this should never happen. I think it's a great idea in terms of providing this housing, but I think the speed doesn't allow the whole community to determine if this is how we want to go about having our community developed in the future. So I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 2.
Yeah. This is still working. Kitsy Rothermel, 330 Muscatawkwood Road. I'm actually speaking for the Rothermel family tonight because Terry Rothermel is unfortunately out of town and was very disappointed to have to be so.
Proceed, Ms.
However,
Rothermel.
he will be delighted to know that the warrant article, as we see before us and that we will shortly vote on, does include the affordable housing units. I would like to read, though, a few words that he wrote, because I think it's important for everyone in the community to realize that this is not a first for Concord. This idea of inclusionary housing is something that has been going on in this community, or being worked toward is probably the better word, for almost 30 years. And as he said, Concord's inclusionary housing practice has been built steadily over 20 to 30 years through bylaws, long-range plans, housing advocacy, and diligent attention by our planning boards and the planning department. Such a policy has enabled economic diversity within each of our new communities. And this actually is the practice that just recently had Concord recognized as a, quote, housing hero. So obviously we're doing some things right. He is equally concerned that the idea of possibly not including the housing, but instead giving a gift, a financial gift, may help for something in the long run, but it does move totally away from the inclusionary kind of housing and really moves towards sort of exclusionary housing. And I think that's something that people should really think about as new projects come up. And there may be issues that make you feel like, oh no, affordable housing isn't appropriate. But we want to include everyone in this community, and I think that should be a huge goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rothermel. Good job with the microphone there. Microphone number 1.
Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road.
Ms. Galis.
Thanks. I have a question, and I apologize if it's a naive question, but in terms of use of the land in general, does this mean that in the future for industrial needs we will have fewer options? The housing ideas mostly sound fine to me, but I was just wondering if it will, how it affects our options for any industrial uses or needs in the future.
Okay, would someone from the planning department like to answer that question?
Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management.
Ms. Rasmussen?
Yes, it does remove a parcel from the possibility of some kind of industrial use. However, because of the floor area ratio that's required in this particular area, there's only allowed 3,000 square feet per acre. So for the 9, almost 10 acres that are proposed, that would be a 30,000 square foot building. If it's research and development or a light industrial use, it's 6,000 square feet per acre, which is about just under a 60,000 square foot building. So I don't know that it is economic for the type of use that is envisioned there when you have the Thorough Club, which is a private recreational use, and all the other properties are in residential use, along with the light plant, that I don't think it would be highly desirable for a light industrial or office building use. So I don't think it's a great loss. I think we have enough areas that could be redeveloped that may have greater potential.
Thank you very much. I just want to note that the town clerk has just let me know that as of 7:40, we had 215 voters checked in for special town meeting, which is pretty good for a special town meeting. So thank you all for being here this evening. Microphone 1.
Hi, Lisa Bergen, 228 Oak Hill Circle.
Ms. Bergen?
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions that I think maybe the town can probably answer. One is, Mr. McBride spoke about not having children there, but I'm curious about our ability to support the infrastructure in terms of electrical and water. This past summer, we had kind of a water issue with not having enough. And I know that we're doing the solar on the Grace property, but we were also, I think, trying to work on some stuff over by Nagog Pond, and I don't know the status of that. So I'm curious what the impact is on our electrical resources, on our water resources, and also on our emergency resources. I know we have the new ambulance, but we've had to hire, and I think that we need to calculate this in, the additional housing for that. My other is just curiosity, how does 2 more units affect our overall goal for affordable housing? How does that move us forward? And if we could get a little bit of information on those numbers, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Whalen, would you like to field that one? There's actually 2 questions there, and Mr. Whalen, I don't know if you can address the second one.
Relative to the first question on resources, consumption of resources, we're not consuming as much electric power as we did perhaps 10 years ago due to conservation and other efforts that have been made. So in terms of providing electric supply, we have plenty of capacity and it would have no trouble providing electric. And the same for water. We've planned for growth in the town and we've made allowances for growth in the water supply and water needs also. So this is consistent with that. We're broadening our water options, including Nagog Pond, and to diversify our supply, but we'd have no problem meeting those requirements. The financial analysis that was submitted to the Finance Committee on this project did address the fact that there'd be a modest impact on police and fire services at this location, but not in the same manner that the Concord Muse project was 350 units right next to this property. So, and the police and fire folks are going out to the Muse pretty regularly because of the large number of folks that are there. So this would, the 16 units here would have a negligible impact cost-wise and our ability to meet the need. Marcia, I don't know if you'd like to comment on how 2 units, we are at 10.45% of our housing is in the affordable, subsidized affordable category. We're in danger of dropping down to about 9.5% when they recalibrate our compliance with the 2020 census. So the 2 units will help. I think we'll be short by about 35 units in 2020 if we do nothing. So the 2 units will help towards probably the 35 to 40 units that we'll need to have.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. I believe that the Planning Board has a comment. Ms. Whiting-Cash.
Brooke Whiting-Cash, 1114 Lowell Road, speaking on behalf of the Planning Board. I'd like to respond to the previous comment about the separate parcel for the open that contributes to the open space from where the residences will be established. All of these parcels were originally part of the same piece of property, so they aren't really separate. As well, this property, they were all carved out of the same parcel, sir. Also, in Limited Industrial Park 2, it is the alternative planned residential development, which is why this is before you tonight. It is not measured by the same standards and does not go through the same process as a PRD in other parts of town. As part of the other part of town, a PRD is required to provide some benefit to the community, not just the residents that are there. The benefit of having an open space parcel contiguous with existing town land that provides access to additional trails for the adjacent neighborhood and for the new residents that will be in this Forest Ridge Road neighborhood is very important and it is very valuable, as opposed to an isolated portion of open space that is not contiguous to other town-owned land.
Thank you, Ms. Cash. Microphone 1.
Hi, I'm Craig Beckman, 653 Main Street.
Proceed.
So I have a couple questions. My first question is, by this project going through, does it limit future PRDs in the town or other age-restricted PRDs? And my second question is, the long-range planning documents I've reviewed talks about more cluster development closer to town center and transportation. I was wondering, how this project might fit in with that.
Ms. Whiting-Cash?
In response to that, this project in no way compromises additional future projects as PRDs or as age-restricted. There's no limit set on those. And in terms of I believe you're talking about a smart growth type of ideology. Yes, we would like to see clustered growth around our town centers. However, looking at the population, to have it in a location where they have an option for a health facility, they have outdoor trail network, they have shopping close at hand, they have access to major roadways, that is seen as a desirable benefit as well for clustered type development.
Thank you. And microphone 1.
Michelle Flum, 324 Sudbury Road.
Ms. Braun?
Basically, here's what I wanted to say. The offer of affordable housing, on the face of it, is generous. And the idea of having open space, again, is generous. But what we need to sit here and ask ourselves tonight is at what cost? Concord is a town we have all moved to because it's green, it's open space. We really need to think twice about what we're allowing and how we're allowing development. So my question here really is, when we make these decisions tonight to the planning board, what precedents are we actually setting in place? Is this really just about this one project, or is it about a lot of projects? Because right now there's a number of things happening that are really impacting our town and the way that the town is being set. So basically what I'm asking you is, at what cost, at what precedent, and even more importantly, why are we talking about this so quickly and in December when we're not all together in, totally in the same room for Maine town meeting? Thank you.
Microphone 1.
Marjorie Daggett, 80 Deaconess Road. I rise to ask the town meeting to vote this warrant article down. I think that this whole area, a much larger area than is shown here, was originally zoned as a limited industrial park number 2. And I question, it's not been brought out by any one of the boards, why it's being split up into little parcels with the introduction in 2001 of an alternate PRD just for LIP number 2. And we've already had one parcel in 2001. We've had another parcel picked off in 2015. And now we are setting an extremely unpleasant precedent by offering 2 parcels that are so far apart. Does this mean that any alternate PRD is just what the planning board decides it's going to be or developer decides it's going to be, and that open space can be someplace on the other side of town? That limited industrial park was probably, I would presume, set up to allow Concord to develop various commercial retail properties. And it seems that to me, that it should be discussed as to why this has suddenly become prime residential property for houses that we were told at the hearing would sell for $1.2 to $1.3 million. I think that this whole set of articles should be voted
You are out
down.
of time. I'm sorry. Thank you. Microphone number 4, thank you for waving.
Sorry about that. Bernie Jenkins, 32 Staffordshire Lane.
I can't hear you. Maybe you can get that out of its little holder there.
Bernie Jenkins, 32 Staffordshire Lane.
Ms. Jenkins.
I'm assuming that this project, this building area is going to, the entrance to that is going to be onto Main Street. Can someone clarify that?
Mr. McBride, could you clarify where the entrance will be? Mr. McBride is nodding his head. Yes, the entrance is from Main Street.
Then I guess my question is, has anybody done an impact study on the traffic on Main Street?
Mr. McBride.
Yes, we have done a traffic study. We've done 3 studies, really. The financial impact study, which has been made available, traffic study, and the environmental study. One of the major benefits of an age-restricted residential use is traffic and the spreading out of traffic compared to either commercial use, where everybody comes in the morning. Peak hour is the worst with commercial, or even non-age restricted, where everybody goes out to work in the morning. So the traffic study did a comparison between residential use of the age-restricted proposal that we have and office use. And I'll give you some of the important numbers here. The weekday daily trips for the residential use is 58 trips during the entire day compared to 298. Probably the most important number is the weekday morning peak hour was 5 trips projected versus 42. And the weekday evening peak hour, which is obviously traffic time, was 4 compared to 40. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Is there a follow-up question?
Yes, but I think I'll hold that.
Okay.
For any of those people who live in West Concord and try to travel on Main Street in the morning or the evening, it's an issue.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Candace Nelson, 321 Hayward Mill Road.
Ms. Nelson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to echo concerns that have been articulated earlier this evening about the rush nature of this decision and the special town meeting called to make it. I feel like it's a decision that should be available for wider consideration by the town. But I will also say, as a resident of Thoreau Hills, that the nature of our neighborhood and our part of town has changed a lot. We got the Muse, we got the bus depot, we got the solar installation, we got black birch. I just think I would urge you all to consider putting this decision off for wider consideration and consider what's happening in this part of town.
Thank you. I see no one else standing at a microphone, and I think that means we are... Mr. Bucas, are you heading for the microphone? You are.
Last minute. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Rainer Bucas, 1360 Monument Street.
Proceed.
Yes. We have had this presented as if this is being done just for the benefit of the town. But in fact, this is a project that is a profit-making enterprise of the developer. Putting $16 million plus houses on this little parcel is in fact a profitable business, such that they were willing to give $1 million to the town if they could do it. I think that there are assumptions in the handout that I would question. For example, as an over 55 development, there will be no impact to the schools. Well, I'd suggest that in fact people delaying childbearing and so forth, it doesn't mean also all the women will be over 55 and thus not breeding. In fact, a lot of guys wonder if they marry younger. All right. The 16 units will address a current housing need. I don't know that we have defined a housing need in Concord for houses which sell for more than $1 million. That's not our current housing need at the present time. That's a statement there. And I'm also concerned because there are more than one definition of affordable. There's a town of Concord affordable, and there's a state definition of affordable. And I do not have any clarification on whether the amendment referred to requires these to be absolutely 40B eligible units. At the present time, I've finally decided I'm voting no.
Mr. McBride, do you wish to comment on the 40B issue?
Yeah, and the first point, too, is under the condominium bylaws, because it's age-restricted, 55 and older, there's a prohibition against children under 18 residing there for permanent residency, so there won't be any children in the schools. In terms of the pricing of the affordables, the commitment has been made absolutely 80% of median income, which units will count under the state guidelines.
Thank you. I see no one left standing at a microphone. Ah, hello there. Proceed. Well, I guess first you'll have to tell us who you are.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. David Allen, Heathbridge Road.
Mr. Allen.
I just want to note that in Concord in particular, I don't think it's a shock to any of us that a development project is also a profit-making project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I will remind everybody that this is a 2/3 vote, and we're going to take a moment to make sure we don't need to wait for people from the cafeteria to make their way in order to vote. We'll just wait for the town clerk to come back and tell us. Mr. Dugan, you're getting the motion back up there for us? Excellent, thank you. All those in favor of Article 3, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Hold on for just a minute. We're going to count this. It looks pretty close to me. And so our procedure is to close the doors. And then Mr. Fisher will get his tellers engaged, and we will count this vote. Let me remind you what the procedure is here. Every voter must be in a seat, and you cannot be counted if you're standing at the rear of the hall or off to the side. When the tellers come by your row, they're going to ask you to stand and raise your ballot slip so that they can take an accurate count. And tellers, we will start with counting the vote of those in favor of Article 3. Everyone who's in favor of Article 3, would you please hold your ballots up? Stand and hold your ballot up. Thank you. Tellers, don't forget to count your own votes. is Abe. Mr. Fisher, are you ready for, no, not yet. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. All those opposed to Article 3, please stand and raise your ballots. ahead. The vote count is complete. We had 197 people voting. A two-thirds vote would have required 131 affirmative votes, and the motion fails by a vote of 115 affirmative to 82 negative. And given the vote, that is a vote, and I do declare it. Given the vote on Article 3, Mr. McBride, I presume there is no point in proceeding with Articles 4 and 5. Thank you. In which case, Mr. Whalen, we will proceed with Article 6.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. There is a handout for the motion. I apologize for the small type of the motion for Article 6.
All right, the motion is on the screen. Was this motion printed in a handout,
There is
Mr.
a handout
Whalen? There is a
with the
handout that was on the literature table. Everybody should have that. And before we proceed, is there a second for the motion on Article 6? I see that there is. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And I'll note that there's a map of the property in question following the text and the explanation of Article 6. Article 6 requests that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $400,000 toward the purchase of 80 acres of property on Balls Hill Road. This map, you with me, Sean? There we go. This map shows Balls Hill Road, which is east of Monument Street. The town purchased 17 acres at the end of Balls Hill Road for water supply purposes in 2001. The arrows point to that, black arrows point to that. At town meeting in April of 2016, the town voted to authorize the select board to work in collaboration with the Concord Land Conservation Trust to purchase Charlene Englehart's 80 acres of land adjacent to those 17 acres, which was part of the historic October Farm property. The closing for this transaction is scheduled to take place next week on December 15th. In this photo, the land highlighted in green is the property the town and the land trust will acquire next week. The property highlighted in yellow is the 17 acres the town already owns. And dotted yellow lines show the existing trail network, and the property has more than a mile of frontage along the Concord River. This slide shows the financial arrangements for the land purchase as approved by town meeting last April under Article 23. The property was originally offered for sale for $7 million. We had an independent appraiser, John Avery, confirm that the market value was $6.95 million. Concord CLCT negotiated reduced price to $6 million if the transaction is completed by the end of calendar 2016. Town meeting appropriated $2 million from the town, with $800,000 coming from the water fund, $800,000 from general fund borrowing, and $400,000 in Community Preservation Act fund. With the town appropriating $2 million, this left a balance of $4 million for the land trust to try to raise through grants and gifts. To assist CLCT in that daunting task of raising $4 million when there are many other institutions in Concord raising money, the town agreed to partner with the land trust in writing a grant for state funding. We're pleased to learn 2 weeks ago that the grant was approved. Under the terms of the grant, the town must upfront the money in advance toward the purchase price and then apply for reimbursement showing proof that the transaction has been completed. Payment from the Commonwealth is expected on or before June 1st of 2017. The grant funds will be used to reduce the amount of private gifts that the CLCT must raise. We're just a week away from concluding this extraordinary purchase of this beautiful piece of land. The existing trail network that will be available to all, there'll be a gravel parking lot, not there now, but it will be constructed upon purchase of the property, and we're right at the end of Balls Hill Road. So I urge your favorable action on this request to temporarily allow the town to appropriate funds in advance that will be reimbursed by a state grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 6, as does the Natural Resources Commission. And the Finance Committee also recommends affirmative action. I believe that we will hear from both the Select Board, Ms. Hotchkiss, and also from the town's partner in this acquisition, the Concord Land Conservation Trust. Ms. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jane Hotchkiss, member of the Select Board, speaking on behalf of the Select Board. As you've heard from Mr. Whalen, Concord has had the tremendous good fortune of being awarded a land grant of $400,000 by the state in support of our acquiring 221 and 265 Balls Hill Road, supporting conservation and passive recreation and water supply purposes. This award is the result of significant efforts made by our Natural Resources Department working with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs at the state. There were approximately 26 applications competing for the $6.2 million. The town's professional staff should be well applauded for the work that went into securing this award. The $400,000 represents 1/6 of Concord's $2.4 million share, with the generosity of the Land Trust contributing $3.6 million to complete the $6 million cost of this purchase. This was a significant award. However, because it comes in the form of a grant under the provisions of Massachusetts general laws, Concord must first authorize the expenditure of this money and then apply for reimbursement. So goes the state. Put simply, the Select Board supports authorizing the town to release $400,000 towards our contribution to the purchase of the Balls Hill property, and then to apply for a pre-approved grant from the state for reimbursement. This is not unlike what we just saw happen with our electric school bus. And as anyone in town can see, we have a wonderful electric school bus sitting in a parking lot. So once again, we've been awarded a very generous grant, and I join the Select Board and others in strong support of this vote.
Thank you, Ms. Hotchkiss. I think I see Mr. Stevens for the Land Trust.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. John Stevens, 26 Simon Willard Road, and I'm also a trustee of the Concord Land Trust. At the beginning of last summer, after the appropriation of $2 million by town meeting and after the substantial completion of our individual solicitations, the Land Trust found itself, largely I think due to competing capital campaigns for other worthy causes, in a position where we were approximately $1 million short of where we had projected we would be at that stage. So we began looking for additional funds and quickly focused on the Commonwealth's Land Acquisition for Natural Diversity Grant Program. And we learned that if the Land Trust were to apply, the grant would be capped at $85,000. That's the limit for private entities. But if a public entity like the town's Conservation Commission were the applicant, then a grant could be as large as $400,000. You won't be surprised that the application we jointly prepared was submitted in the name of the town, with, as Chris said, a successful result last month. In the meantime, the Land Trust had closed the majority of the $1 million shortfall through negotiating a second price reduction with the seller, through securing a challenge grant that we matched, and through really unprecedentedly generous response to membership and townwide appeals. We had, all in all, 329 individuals and families have contributed a total of more than $3.7 million. There are many expenses on top of the $6 million purchase price. I'd like to say to all of you and to the people who are watching on television, thank you all very much for this wonderful generosity. That it has placed us in a position that with this $400,000 grant, the Land Trust will have achieved its goal, and we will be able to buy this property on behalf of ourselves and the town 1 week from today without compromising our ability to respond promptly to threats and appeals in the future as we've done in the past. This happy outcome, once again, relies on affirmative action on Article 6. Please vote yes.
You know, as wonderful as that news is, I will remind you that town meeting is a place we don't applaud. So, microphone number 1.
D. Ortner, 169 Thoreau Street. Madam Moderator, the question I have is, was there a second to this motion?
Yes.
There was.
Thank you. Microphone number 1.
Thank you. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road.
Proceed.
I speak for the League of Women Voters by saying that the League of Women Voters would like to thank, in particular, the Department of Natural Resources and the Concord Land Trust for making this purchase possible. It is a remarkable gift to the town.
Thank you. Microphone number 2.
My name is Klaus Kleinschmidt. I live at 51 Deaconess Road. I have two.
Proceed.
Thank you. I have two little items. One is I'm confused a little bit about the mention of 80 acres in the article versus the small various little pieces of land that are shown in the on page 4. I added up those pieces and they come out to 118 acres. So I'm just curious why where the difference comes from. The other comment I wanted to make, I've walked some of the property and it's absolutely gorgeous, and I think Concord deserves to have it as a crown in its conservation land.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen, would you like to address the question on the number of acres?
Well, I'm thinking that perhaps the numbers are including the 17 acres that we already owned of water department land, because the total is, I believe it's 80 acres, John, excuse me?
I believe a parcel that is being retained by Charlene Engelhardt is shown separately. And I think if you subtract those acres, you will come down to the 80.
So I apologize for the map not being correct.
It's the northernmost parcel shown as A1. That's not being acquired.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, it appears that we are ready for a vote. This article also requires a 2/3 vote because it is land acquisition and because we are doing some transfers between town departments here. We're checking whether anyone needs to make their way in from the cafeteria. We're just waiting for Mr. Fisher to come back and let us know whether there are folks who would like to make their way in. We're good to go. Okay. All those in favor of Article 6, please raise your ballots. Thank you. All those opposed to Article 6, please raise your ballots. Well, that looks to be unanimous. It is a vote, and I so declare. And that will conclude special town meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn? And a second. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you and good night.